Hi, I'm Kiwi,
And I'm Jared.
and we are the two gentlemen still in lockdown. Jared, how are you?
Still in lockdown. All good, all good. Just, I think nothing's really changed. Like I've said last time, big Groundhog Day, but seeing you and doing this podcast is a nice change.
Yep. And hopefully, anyone listening to this is feeling the same.
Hope so. Whilst in lockdown, I've been watching a bit of sport, as you do. And I noticed a particular game not long ago, and I don't know if you saw it or this particular incident. There was a little bit of a mess up, and I won't get into the details, but it ended up being a penalty against this particular team. And one of the players, who was the captain of the team, put it this way, used some colourful language to single out a certain player and his mistake. And within 5 seconds or 10 seconds of that happening, you saw him go over and they both nodded at each other and had a bit of a smile. Now, I don't know of a workplace that you could do that in the and where a boss or a team leader could do that and then not have an HR issue or whatever it's called these days. But it was an interesting sort of exchange and almost like a motivational sort of thing for this guy that made the mistake. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not too sure how motivated I would be if someone let loose a barrage of colourful language like that at me. But that's what we call a spray, I think, is what's sort of known here in Australia. I don't know if it's everywhere else, but this guy copped quite a spray.
I saw that only because you alerted me to it. It was definitely a verbal torrent of colourful language, as you said. But yeah, look, I don't know. I don't remember ever speaking to anyone on the field like that. I'd certainly, from my position at fullback, quite often I'd yell purely to communicate because people couldn't hear me otherwise. When I'm, spotting holes in the defense and, counting numbers and seeing what the offense is about to do. But, this player, he was captain and I guess he has to lead. But that wouldn't have been my style of leadership, that's for sure. As grown men, they are entitled to talk to each other however they feel, especially, in the heat of battle.
I'm still processing it actually, because as grown adults, and you say men, but as grown adults, we can, you can talk to people. You can, we're not going to all, fade into nothing if you throw out some bad language, but I suppose there's a form of respect that has to be shown, and I don't know. I mean, like I said, I've been on the end of sprays. I haven't really given sprays, but I think it's more of a, like if people know they've made an error. Like I've had to captain a team, a sports team quite recently actually, and it was only purely not because I was a good captain. It was just because I was old and have experienced things. So playing that role of having to give someone a spray wasn't really natural for me. But there was times there where as a captain and as a leader and to get people's attention, sometimes you did have to single people out and say, hey, that was rubbish what you did, or but you pick and choose who you do that to. But again, it's within the lines of a sporting field. You wouldn't walk up on the street and someone spilled their coffee. You wouldn't yell at them and carry on and call them all the names under the sun and pick it up. I suppose it's a funny thing. I think we've talked about it before in our sport episode that how, what's accepted on the sports field is very much not accepted in real life reality.
Clearly, the captain's intentions were to, of course, let off steam, but also motivate his teammate.
Yeah.
As an adult, what motivates you? What inspires you? How would someone get the best out of you?
It wouldn't be yelling at me. It's always even as a child, teenager playing sport. It never actually that style never worked. So a coach or another player yelling at you, going, you got to be tougher, or you got to do this, or you got to run harder, or you got to do this. That never worked for me. I guess I'm a lover, not a fighter. But yeah, look, in real life, for me, it's my own personal accomplishment, accomplishments that motivate me. So I get motivated by the small wins. So I can't look at something and go, in 2 years' time we're going to achieve. I'm talking in, say, let's just say in a work situation. In 2 years' time we're going to achieve this big goal. Okay, that's great. But for me, it's like the steps of that goal, and I break everything down. That kind of rewards me, and that motivates me. Same thing with, I know this sounds silly, but this is just the way that I do things. When I go for a long drive, for example, getting voicing this sounds weird, but getting to a place, it's like, that place is 30 kilometers away, and you're like, okay, so if I do 60 kilometers an hour, I should get there in half an hour, and reaching that goal, that milestone of an 8-hour drive, just kind of keeps you going for that big goal of the 8-hour drive. It's sort of breaking it down, but that's the way I reward myself and motivate myself.
Yeah, so it's a small wins along the way to build up to that big vision.
Yeah, I think that's where I sort of sit. I don't know how. I'll have to think on how I get motivated by other people. That's something that I'll ask you that question. Is there a way that somebody can motivate, like not yourself, but somebody can motivate you?
Yeah, I'm a real sucker, Jared. I fall for anything, really. Mate, people could
Note
put
that down, people.
Mate, if I hear Eye of the Tiger, I'm off. That's the kind of guy I am.
There'll be some pyramid schemes coming your way soon, mate. Keep voicing that over the internet.
I know. The spam filter on my email's not strong enough to withstand it all. But yeah, look, I guess I'm very lucky in that sense that I'm easily motivated. People can get the best out of me quite easily. So I remember one of my martial arts instructors baiting me. We're doing this fitness circuit, and I'd set the record, and then someone broke it, and I was like, that's fine, he can have the record. And they're like, oh, come on, mate, you've got to have another go. I reckon you can beat him. I was like, yeah, right. So it didn't take much for that. But yeah, look, you said, external forces. I'm very easily motivated by myself. I'm very strong in that. I push myself pretty hard in the things I want to. So I guess it just doesn't take much for someone to push me further from that. But I guess the reason why I've thought about this is because I've seen so many sprays lately, and I'm just wondering how productive it is. For example, in the football world, you see at halftime, you hear about coaches going off at their players, ripping doors off hinges, kicking chairs. There was one incident in particular that I found hilarious. This was years ago. A team was getting absolutely pummeled, and at halftime, the coach walked into the change rooms and just said, "You can all go and get," and you can imagine how he finished that sentence, and then walked out, and that was it. I don't think he lasted long after that. But basically, he blamed the team for costing him his coaching career, and he walked out. Now, to me, how productive is it to keep yelling at a person, especially at a grown-up?
I don't advocate yelling at people to get something. I mean, it's sort of something that, even if, I do plan on doing some coaching, later on down the track, and that's not the style that I'd use. I wouldn't be comfortable with it. And I guess just with it, question without notice, I guess I would think that yelling at a group of people, you've got 15 people there, people are going to react differently to that. And I know that then when I was in those groups that would be getting, yelled at as a collective, I wouldn't respond to that. I wouldn't go out in the field and go, I need to take this and that coach told me, because I almost like laugh. Like, I almost find it amusing that it can get to that point where somebody's losing the plot, and I'm like, surely there's other things to worry. Like, if this is in the middle of a football game, or in the middle of a of a half time or somewhere where it's quite a big deal for the time or whatever. It's it's what's driving you at that moment. And for me, having someone absolutely lose the plot doesn't work for me. So I wouldn't yell at people in return. Like, it's a hard one to I wouldn't feel comfortable at all. So I don't really know how to answer it.
And day to day, you certainly wouldn't yell at anyone. Like, I couldn't imagine my manager pulling me into the office and then just letting go and giving me a spray. She'd sit me down, and she definitely wouldn't use the language that captain used on his teammate. And if she did, I'd be okay. I could handle it. I'm a big boy, but I couldn't imagine doing that to anybody myself day to day. So, if you were managing people, Jared, how would you get the best out of somebody?
Well, I'd start by ripping a door off, like you said. No, no. Honestly, mate, it's it's almost like a personal thing. Like you almost have to get to know your audience. Now, easier said than done. If you're managing 200 people, how do you get to know 200 people, their responses to certain ways? So you can definitely see why sometimes people get lost in situations and don't respond, dig their heels in as such, and they're like, well, that's not the way that I would do this, and blah 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 blah. So it's a lot easier if you're dealing with small, but you've got to but realistically you do have to cater to your audience. So you say you're a bit of a sucker there. So that coach was catering to you. He knew that would get you to perform. Like whilst you have your strong thoughts, motivators within, but that coach was just striking or lighting the pilot light. I know that I've played under captains and who's now a particular person I'm thinking of. He had this way of getting people to buy into what he was selling when it came to coaching and captaining a football side. He made it sound so simple, and for whatever reason, well, I still don't know, but it just works. Like it's all about, this is why, explaining why we're doing something, and basically if you don't buy into that, well then maybe here's some evidence to show you why you should buy into it. And if you do buy into it, then great, we'll move on to the next step or whatever. So I'm not doing him justice explaining how he does things, but it's and look, he's given a spray, but you've copped it knowing that I did something against the grain and didn't buy in for that for whatever reason, or I made a mistake. So copping the spray isn't actually that bad. It's almost like I understand why I did the wrong thing or why you're angry and so on. So this is again in the sporting world, so you can rant and rave a little bit, but if you transfer that into the workplace or into a relationship, you're not going to be going out there screaming, carrying on. But it's all about working together, I guess. That's the main thing, and making someone motivated to work to that goal.
I think you really nailed it, Jared, when you said that it's about knowing someone and getting to them personally.
Yeah.
And you really highlighted a problem with managing big teams or a big organization. You said, what if you're in charge of 200 people? Well, I guess you shouldn't be. It doesn't work. It doesn't work to be in charge of a team that big. I don't know how a team can be that big. I think early on in the Amazon journey, they said that they had a pizza rule, which was a team shouldn't be bigger than what it would take to feed them with one pizza. And I thought that's a pretty good rule of thumb. And you think about what you were saying with with the massive team. Well, yeah, you couldn't feed them with anything less than 200 pizzas. So that would be ridiculous. And with what you were saying with that particular friend who was a coach and people buying into his vision, I really liked what you said about it being evidence-based. That kind of takes the emotion out of it. I think about the greatest players in any sport. They're machines. They're not animals. And, when you have emotion there, when you're trying to build someone up and get them really, really fired up, it does really, really work for only a tiny bit of time, though. That's the thing. Once you run out of steam, well, once something goes against you, like Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Once that peters out, well, what do? You don't have, the plan A or anything. It's just purely animal instinct. And, when you're basing things on evidence, it's about becoming a machine. And I really like that.
Just triggered me in a little thought that these machines you talk about, and these athletes that are at the top of their game, they're so close to each other, as in like their opposite number, the person they're competing against or the team they're competing against are so close in fitness levels, in physical ability, in knowledge of the game, that sometimes just to get them over that edge for that small amount of time, a coach will go in there and rip a door off to just roll them up just for that 10 minutes to create that point of difference when they get back out on the field. Now, at the elite level, that does make sense to a certain degree, because you've got these guys doing exactly the same thing. They've trained the same way. They've got the same nutrition. Realistically, you're actually looking for something out of the box. If you're doing that at a level of the football where we played, or it's not going to have that same effect. You might, like I said, you're going to get me there almost laughing, going, really? Like, come on. I've got other things to worry about, But when you're talking about elite athletes, and, the one we started the show off with was, they're elite athletes. Maybe that captain who did that knew that would fire up old mate who copped the spray. And like I said, within 5 seconds, 10 seconds, they were kind of smiling at each other and just, it was water off a duck's back. But it was probably a realization that, I was an idiot or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of a nitrous boost or something just to add to that machine at the time. That's what emotion is. Jared, I just want to bring your attention to something. I watch a lot of mixed martial arts events. And if you ever see the coaches, or even in boxing, if you ever see the coaches talk to their athlete, they don't give them a spray. They sit them down very calmly. They always motivate them. They speak to them so gently. Now, these are the toughest guys in the world. Literally some of the best fighters in their weight class. And their coaches aren't yelling at them. They're not saying, oh, well, he's a man, he can handle it. They're speaking to them so gently, so factually, so technically as well. Things like, okay, when he does this, you've got to move your head this way. You're going to have to fake with the jab, and then you're going to have to shoot low. Very, very technical language. And I thought, what a contrast between that coach who's in a combat sport. So, this is the world of man, if you want to look at it that way. This isn't anything soft. What a contrast between that coach and the football coach. And it really got me thinking, I wonder what it would be like if one of these hard men in rugby league or rugby union who do give the sprays at halftime, what if they changed tack? I wonder what that would produce. Because there's one coach in particular in the NRL at the moment who's under the pump. I don't want to make this a big sport episode, really. It's about inspiration and motivation. But, there's a point of saturation where, you're just yelling so much that you're just hoarse. People aren't hearing you anyway. So what if a coach in that situation changed tack and took on the mixed martial arts coach approach, where they were more personalized and they were going around and just talking to everybody as an individual, because really 13 or 17 players isn't too many anyway. Or if you had, several people in the coaching staff that could do that, and addressed everyone in a person-centered way, like you said, and spoke to them in a way that, brought out or hit that trigger that brought on self-inspiration.
Lots of sort of visit there, but look, I would suggest that the coach that you're talking about, the ranting and raving would become like white noise. It becomes just a background noise, like, oh yeah, he's going to go off, that's going to happen, whatever. But I suppose I've seen players follow coaches, so that to me indicates that particular coach has a good connection with that player. So like we said, they're machines and they're trained like machines, but they are human. So whilst we say they are machines, they've got emotions, and that's where you see. I'm thinking of a particular player right now, but he followed a particular coach to 3 or 4 different clubs because he didn't care about the clubs. It wasn't about who he was playing for. He was playing the sport that he was getting paid for. He was a professional rugby league player, but he just followed that coach. Wherever that coach went, that was part of the deal. And because, for whatever reason, that coach, made him feel comfortable. Could be a plethora of things that why he followed, but why he was a package deal with that coach. But it just shows that particular styles, and I'm sure that's only one story, but there's many stories that where players in all sports and all walks of life reunite with bosses or coaches or people of that have, I'm not going to say power, but you know what I mean, people of that stature that would be them, would manage them, I guess, because they realise that they respond better to that particular person.
Yep, absolutely agree, Jared. Look, from a day-to-day perspective, how do you get the most out of people? It could be anybody, whether it's your kids or your wife or your friends. Is there anything that you do to lift people?
For me, it's trying to let them realize, show them that they can realize, what they do has a reward. So, could be as little as, after breakfast, my daughter has to get dressed for school. And she has to do that so my wife can get out and take her to school and get to work. So that's the reasoning. We're not just saying get dressed because we want you to wear a uniform. We're actually saying part of the process of my wife leaving the house is, both girls need to be dressed and then they can't be watching, they've got to eat their breakfast. They can't be watching TV, all day. So that's the process of leaving the house. But, those little battles that you have along the way of they just want to sit and watch the TV. It's, 7:30 in the morning and they just want to chill out, which is understandable, But, we need to, I guess, make them feel it's a reward when they get dressed because, they don't want to do it just for the sake of it. But we're going to try and explain, well, that's the reason you're doing it is so we can get out. So it's almost like understanding that, once you succeed in that, then, you move on to the next goal and, getting a sense of, might want to help me out with the word.
Sense of achievement, I guess.
Achievement, yeah. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word right then, but yeah, exactly. Your sense of achievement from doing that task. And I mean, I suppose that's, with kids, my limited experiences is, as life goes on, those tasks become bigger. But as a kid, that task is, do your homework for 5 minutes, Like if I had homework for 5 minutes, I'd get it done. As soon as I walked in the door, get it done. My reward is I can go and have something to eat or whatever. But as a kid, that 5 minutes is the worst 5 minutes of their life, So it's all about, showing, okay, well, once you get in the door, we'll knock that 5 minutes out and then you can do whatever you want, and it's just, giving them a sense of achievement. That's how I motivate my kids, I guess, in general. Like obviously there's different things you experience in life, but in general, that's how I sort of get things done.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very fact-based as well for you, the way you do it.
And it's probably based on my experience, like I said earlier, I like to break down a big job into small little achievements. So, like that 8-hour drive that, every half an hour I'm clocking to make sure, and it's probably a result of the way that I do things. And I'm not saying that's right because, there's many other ways and some people react better to, there's a massive goal 8 hours ahead and I'm going to get there within that time frame and not think about the 8 hours, and whereas, so that's just my mindset. Whether or not my kids follow in that sort of vein or whether that's right or wrong, I don't even know if there's a right or wrong in this regard, but it's just how I break things down.
Yep. It's how you work.
Yeah. But I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to really motivate people in the workplace. I mean, you've said previously that you've managed people professionally. I guess that's something that I haven't really gone into, but have you had any hiccups of or any successes in regards to people who you've managed? Is there anything?
Well, look, I'm very blessed. I've got an amazing team around me, so it's very, very easy to do that job when I was in it. For me, the best thing I can do, like anyone listening to this, everyone's got so much power and they don't realize it. And if you're kind to people, you can make someone's day. You can really lift people just through an act of kindness. It's amazing, actually. You let somebody in traffic, you let somebody cross the road when you're driving, and, just give them a smile. It really changes the energy of the place. And it's just one tiny little act. Now, imagine extrapolating that into, say, a workplace where you're the CEO, or even, lower than that. I was just, a manager in a house. Now, just being good to people, just having a good attitude, just having a nice spirit, just being funny, just your general sense of humor and general sense of awareness of what's going on in a workplace or, with your family can really, I think, elevate people. And I guess this conversation, Jared, came about because we were talking about a leader and the way he was communicating with one of his teammates. And I think about leaders in general, whether it's, the president of the world, captain of Earth or whatever. What's the point? What is the role of a leader? And there's been a lot of talk about, I like this person because they tell it as it is. They're just real. And a friend of mine said to me, well, do we want our leaders to be just like us? Do we want them to be the ordinary Joe, or do we want them to be something greater? And for me, I think the job of a leader is to elevate the consciousness of others. It's to lift us higher, to improve our thinking, to improve the quality of our thinking, to improve the things that we think about, to improve our processes. So I feel that as a leader, that's my job, to lift everybody. And I feel like the way to lift everybody is by leading by example and having a good positive vibe about you. So that's how I go about things. And I think about the little things, like I tell my kids, you can really make someone's day just by asking, hi, how are you? And showing interest.
Just elaborating on that, I guess, like especially with this situation the world's in at the moment, just walking around the street and, keeping your distance and doing all that you're supposed to do to, socially distance and keep safe and whatever. But, everybody actually is starving for a little bit of human contact. And I know we've kind of branched off a little bit here, but, like the niceness really does make a difference now. So everybody I walk past now is looking at you to either they say hello and then you answer, or they're waiting for you to say hello. And you wouldn't necessarily do that, before this happened. You probably walk past 15 people and maybe nod to one. Now it's almost like 100% sort of hit rate where, it's just a nod or a smile, even though you got a mask on. It's just something for people to grab onto, and it does lift their spirits. It just reminds me a little bit of, I did a drive across Northern Territory, and like the roads are that long that you could drive for, doing 120, 130 kilometers an hour, and you could drive for 5 to 10 minutes without seeing anybody coming the other way. So you can imagine how far you would get in that time. And then you'd finally see a car coming the other way, and they had this thing like a one finger wave off the steering wheel, like everyone did it, and it was just like a knowing smile or a nod, but it was just there, like you just see this one finger come up from the steering wheel on the opposite car, and it was almost at 100% as well. And as soon as I got into, I said to my wife at the time, when she was with me, I said, let's see if we can do it within suburbia. Not one person gave me the one finger wave. They must have think I was crazy, but it was the nicest feeling to drive across that vast part of the country and just have this, like, you didn't feel alone. You kind of felt like, I don't know, you could have been the guy from Wolf Creek, who knows? But but it was like just that act of kindness really helps. Makes your day.
Absolutely. And there's so much power in that. And if you make somebody's day, what are they going to do? They could produce the best work of their lives. Yeah.
And it's just it's like the pyramid effect that I was talking to you about earlier, that you're about to hit lots on the emails. But like they do the same, and all of a sudden, that's 6 degrees of separation. Hopefully you've got to everybody.
Yeah. You never know the world that you can create. That's the thing. And people don't understand the power that they hold just purely by being kind.
Mm. Yeah. So yeah, that's right. And it on the other end of things, it just sort of shows you don't have to be a real asshole, and what sort of effect that would have on people. Like so. For me, kindness is the way to go.
Well, Jared, it's definitely getting the best out of me, this friendship with you.
Same, mate. Same. This is very warm and fuzzy.
Thanks so much, Jared.
Thank you, mate.